Hello, so in this video I will give you my personal reactions and opinion to a mycotoxin test and an ERMI test from a person I'm in contact with on Facebook. And so just be informed that I'm not a doctor and this is not medical advice, it's just my personal opinions. I had mold illness for several years and right now I'm mycotoxin free because I detoxed. I left my former home. I also had a positive ERMI test and mycotoxin test, of course. So I have some experience, but I'm not a doctor. And of course, if you suspect mycotoxins to be the cause of your health problems, you should go to a doctor that is mold literate, that knows about mycotoxins, and do the necessary tests and the necessary treatments with your doctor. So this is just for informational purposes and my personal opinions. I might be wrong, and but it might be interesting to watch it and give you some hints where you should do your research, and again, get accompanied by a doctor. So here we have a picture of her mycotoxin test, and we can see that she has 15.9 of ochratoxin A. And we can also see that ochratoxin becomes positive, the test becomes positive if it is above 7.5. So the question that she has been asking me is if I think that this can come from food or if that is due to mycotoxins in the home. What I've heard is that, of course, you have ochratoxin A in food, but usually it's not enough to get you high values on the mycotoxin test. So is 15.9 a high value? Well, mine was like 24, so much more than 15.9. So I'm not sure, it might be from food, but my feeling on that is that it is rather from mold in the home or in the car. Because I think once it gets positive on this kind of test, it should be from a water damaged building, in my opinion. And then she is also positive on mycophenolic acid, which gets positive if it gets over 37.4, and she is at 114, so that's clearly positive. Mycophenolic acid is not strictly speaking a mycotoxin, but it's a metabolite, so it means that it's the normal excretions of the digestion of a mold species. The mold species is Penicillium brevicompactum, who produces mycophenolic acid. And in order to produce mycophenolic acid, it must be a thriving colony. So that means it's a colony that is growing at this time of exposure. So also mycophenolic acid is detoxed very rapidly by your body normally, and I think the half time of it is like 18 hours or less than 24 hours. So basically, if you get out of the exposure, mycophenolic acid should leave the body in some days. I don't know if you know it, but mycophenolic acid is actually used to produce a medication which is given to people who receive organ transplants, and you have to give them medication to shut off the immune system because the body might reject the transplanted organ, and mycophenolic acid has a strong immunosuppressive action. So they produce in the laboratory mycophenolic acid, and people with organ transplants have to take that in order to shut down the immune system. So that means that if you have mycophenolic acid in your system, that your immune defenses are weakened, and also mycophenolic acid disturbs the gut, so the microbiome, and it might also create leaky gut, but a lot of people have gut problems with that. So if we take both informations together, the fact that you are positive on ochratoxin A and mycophenolic acid, because mycophenolic acid is an ongoing exposure, because usually it leaves the body within some days. So if you test positive, it means that you are in an ongoing exposure. So the fact that you have mycophenolic acid and ochratoxin A, I would rather say it's not food, it's from a water damaged building or a water damaged car. So I remember that you told me that your husband didn't have one of those mycotoxins. So it might be that, let's say, if you're in a couple and everybody has his own car, then it might be that it's in your car and not in the home. But it might also be that your husband has other detox capacities than you, and that you have the same exposure, but it doesn't show up in his system because he detoxes mycotoxins more easily. So the second test that this lady has sent me is an ERMI test with several notes on it, because she called the lab and they gave her some explanations on that. So basically, you see the species of mold and the count on the right side. So if we scroll down, we see that we have two groups here, and I personally find that the way they show the information on this ERMI test result is not very interesting. Let me show my ERMI test and then come back to this one to have some more explanations. What is interesting to understand is why are there two sections in the ERMI test. So I will put up my ERMI and then explain it to you. Okay, so here we are on my ERMI test, and you see the same two groups, but they have a title. So on the right side, group 2, it says common indoor molds. So that is the mold species that live in a home or in a building that has no water damage and that has just normal molds, no mycotoxin sickness in people. And then on the left side, the group 1, those are the molds that you find in water damaged buildings. So that is important to distinguish, because if we have an elevation here on the left side, it means that it's making you sick, and that's something that you find in water damaged buildings. So if you have a look on my ERMI test, that's from 2022, you see that aspergillus even has 2 asterixes. So it's, let's see here, it's 100-fold higher than normal if you have 2 asterixes. And different species, you have 1 asterix. So we will go back to the ERMI test of the lady, but we have to keep in mind that if it shows up in the first group as high, then it means that it's problematic and that it's probably due to a water damage in the building. Okay, so we are back here in the ERMI test of the lady, and you can see that in the first section there are some molds that have the little asterisks which are higher than normal. And she noted H2O damage for Chaetomium globosum. Well, that is actually with another one, which is called Stachybotrys. Where is it? So here, Stachybotrys chartarum and Chaetomium globosum are the 2 worst molds that create the most dangerous mycotoxins. So the Stachybotrys chartarum is at 1. There's no asterisk behind it, but I remember that there are many people who were ill with mycotoxins that said it must be 0, because it's not a natural mold that you would find in a normal environment. So even if it's only 1, let's keep in mind that there are people who said that's too much. And for Chaetomium, it's 34. And it's marked, it's because of water damage. Well, all this group here, if they are elevated, it's because of water damage in the home, basically. That's what it means. But even if you don't have an asterisk behind Chaetomium, because it's so dangerous for your health and totally crashing you, it should be 0 or close to 0. So being 34, I do think personally that that is a problem. I don't know why she marked 40 or less. In my case, the first ERMI that I did in August of 2022, I had a very low cadmium count on it. But half a year later, it was also like 30 or 40, so in the same range as on this test, and it totally destroyed me. So it is said that cadmium produces a mycotoxin which is called ketochlorosin A, and that it creates states of dementia, which was my case at that time. So I completely lost control over my life. And actually, it was friends who organized that I was hospitalized for 3 weeks in a clinic that was close to the sea. So there was fresh air coming from the sea that had no pollution whatsoever. And the funny thing is that when mycotoxins crash you so strongly that when you get out of the exposure, usually within 45 minutes, you feel much better and your brain comes back, you can move again, etc. What also helped at that time was to take decontamination showers. You just rinse your body and your hair with water, because that gets away some mycotoxins that are on your skin or in your hair. And that also got me some relief, but because I stayed in my home at that time, it took, let's say, half an hour or an hour to get new mycotoxins in my system from the home, and to feel very bad and be in states of dementia, basically. So then they put me into hospital, and after three weeks I was much better, but I decided not to go back into the home, and I moved out of it. And I also had to get rid of at least 95% of my stuff, because on personal belongings you can also have mycotoxins. So that is not necessary for everybody, it depends. The point here was, in my case, that when you detox from mycotoxins, you oftentimes, not all the times, but oftentimes, you might develop multiple chemical sensitivity. So during the time you were in the water damaged building, you got a huge amount of mycotoxins. So the whole system was completely paralyzed and affected by it. But once you detox, the body and the immune system remembers the information of the toxins. So when you get re-exposed to very small quantities, then it might trigger a huge detox reaction. It's not an allergy, but it's hitting you hard like an allergy. Let's put it this way. So that's why at that time I had to move out. I had to move close to the sea, to be in the wind directly, and I had to get rid of most of my stuff, basically, because I had this multiple chemical sensitivity. Let's have a look on the other notes. So it's written here, mold inspection report. Well, it's maybe a good idea to have a mold inspector watch the house and analyze it, but that also costs money. I do think basically that you should test the home again, and maybe your car also. And if that's positive, you should also test mycotoxins in the urine of every person that is living in the home. If that is positive, in my opinion, you should immediately move to a place that is clean, that has no mold, and then you should remediate the home to be able to sell it or rent it, basically. It is written on the paper here that maybe use a dehumidifier or an air purifier. Well, some people do that. A dehumidifier will not get rid of the mold because it's maybe already there, but mold needs a certain humidity to be able to grow. So if you use a dehumidifier, the climate in the home gets less humid, but that does not kill the mold or get rid of it. So it will just grow less, but it will stay basically as dangerous as it already was. In the air purifiers, so that's like air filters, there are different brands. They come with a price tag as well. But the point is, it will not completely clean the air. So you will still be exposed to mycotoxins if they are in the home. And air purifiers can get moldy after some time. So you cannot say for sure if it's like after 3 months or after 3 days. So basically, I wouldn't do that. I purchased an air purifier, even two. I used it a little bit, but it doesn't solve the problem. And you don't know if it's moldy and thus distributing mycotoxins in the air. So what you should do is test the home, test the urine, and if it's positive, you must get out of the exposure. It's as simple as that. That's the only real solution. Unfortunately, I have to say that unfortunately there is not an explanation here on the test for the asterisks. So it's my imagination that if there is an asterisk behind it, that it means it's 10 times more elevated than normal. This one here, Penicillium brevicompactum, is the one that produces mycophenolic acid. It has a star, so it might be the reason why mycophenolic acid is in your system. The value of the ERMI is 17.42. That is high. I had made a screenshot here that's from another ERMI test. Well, let's have a look here. So if the ERMI is less than -4, it means there's very few mold in this home and it's safe. If it's less than zero, you might want to investigate. If it's less than 5, you should investigate. If it's more than 5, between 5 and 20, then you have a high relative mold index. So how is that calculated? So that's an important point. Let's switch back here. So basically, they take the value of the water damage building molds here, the first group, and put it into relation to the second group, which are the normal molds. Okay, and that calculates the ERMI value. So with 17.4, you are close to 20. So it's a very high ERMI score. And that, of course, means that you absolutely can get very sick in those buildings. So is that the reason for your health problems? Who knows? The only way to really know it is to move out, at least for a certain time, but I will explain in a moment. So what I then did was to take the values and to calculate the HERTSMI score. So I took that out of the test that you sent me and went to the website of Mycometrics and just entered the values of these 5 species into it. And that calculates the HERTSMI score. So those are the problematic mold species. So the HERTSMI score, the HERTSMI test, is less complete than the ERMI test. If you do an ERMI test, they check for more mold species, and here in the HERTSMI, they only check for 5. So that's a cheaper test. The first test usually is recommended to be the ERMI test to have a complete picture. And the following test, when you do remediation, for instance, can be the HERTSMI test, because you only check for those 5 mold species. So it calculates a value of 20 points. And if we scroll down, then we see, where is it? Here is it. If it's less than 11, it should be safe for people who have mold illness, CIRS, to go back to the home. If it's between 11 and 15, it's borderline. You must clean and retest before re-entry into the home. And if it's more than 15, then it's dangerous for those with CIRS or mold illness to go back to this place. So, as the score is at 20, it's like the ERMI in the red zone, and it should be a dangerous place to go there, and to even more dangerous to live there day in, day out. In the chat, the lady also asked if it doesn't come from the outside. So basically, like trees or nature around the house, the wind has been blowing the mold into the house, and then it settled down and was taken with the Swiffer closed the dust to do the ERMI test. Well, the idea here, if you if you ask this question, is that basically the home is clean, there's no mold in it, and then there was just some wind blowing for some days and just pushing some mold dust into the home, and then that was what is showing up on the test. But basically, maybe it would be enough to clean the home, and then everything is fine. Well, but the point is, if it's the environments of the home that are moldy, then this would continue to blow into the home and just be as toxic as if it was in the home itself. So in my opinion, but I'm not a mold specialist or doctor, if it's the environment, it would just mean the same thing, that you have to get out of the exposure. So you have to test if you have mycotoxins in your system, and then retest the home, and you have to get out of the exposure. So if it comes from the surroundings of this place, it's just as bad as if it comes from growing inside the home. But personally, I do think it's in the home, because let's remember, you have the two groups on the ERMI test, and they are speaking here of molds that grow in water damaged places. So if you have an overexpression, it's that you have it in water damaged buildings. If it's in the nature, the mycotoxins usually they just evaporate, and there's enough wind, etc. Normally you will not get sick of that. But there are cases, if you read the groups on the internet, where people have been more sick in certain places of the environment. If you have, for instance, water cleaning stations or dumps, etc. But usually what the ERMI means, the first group is in water damaged buildings. So I will just react to some other points that this lady has been telling me in the chat. So describing her symptoms, let's say it could be that it comes from mycotoxins. It's not a clear picture, but she also talks about a history of cancer. So my reaction to that is that you should absolutely test if you have mycotoxins in the system still by the urine test. And then you should do everything, if that's possible, to get out of the exposure, to detox with a mold literate doctor, and to try to get back your health. Those are complicated, complex illnesses, indirect illnesses, meaning that mycotoxins first create an inflammatory state in the body, and then it attacks the weakest organ of that person, meaning that every person, even if they have the same mycotoxins, they can end up with completely different symptoms or illnesses, which are secondary illnesses. So it's an indirect illness, mycotoxin illness. I also asked this lady if she had amalgams, root canals, or dental extractions in her life. If you have amalgams, you can have mercury toxicity, which you should detox. You should get the amalgams out with a safety protocol, not with a normal dentist who just rips it out, which increases the toxicity for the body. Root canals, let's put it this way, often turn toxic as well. So if you have root canals, you should get them out by a biological dentist. And when you have dental extractions, they oftentimes form cavities in the jawbone, which are also known as NICOs, N-I-C-O. And the most recent research of a German professor, Dr. Lechner in Munich, shows that in those cavitations there are degenerated fat cells that produce rantis or CCL5. Rantis actually causes cancer. So if you have tumors, it's known in oncology that you have an overexpression of rantis or CCL5. And well, if you have in the jawbone cavitations which can be like 1 centimeter big, which are filled up with fat tissue that produces huge amount of rantis, and that is distributed in the body, then it increases cancerous activity and metastasis. So if you have had dental extractions, you should go to a biological dentist and get at least a cone beam scan to get an idea if you might have cavitations, and you need to get them out by surgery. You could also do a cavitate scan that is an ultrasound device which scans the jawbone for cavitations. So then she tells me in the chat that her car had a leak and the carpet was soaked before she had the mycotoxin test. Just yesterday they pulled out the padding, and she intends to spray the carpet with hydrogen peroxide because that would kill mold. Well, just to say that again, if you try to kill mold, it will leash more mycotoxins to defend itself. So many people get much more sick when they try to clean mold or to kill mold. Then the discussion continues, and she says that her husband already put out the carpet and the padding, and he had a horrible headache yesterday. So probably the fact to try to pull the padding out of the car increased the headache of the husband, because he had it before doing it, but it increased after he has been working on the car to get the carpet and the padding out of it. So you should not try to clean or remediate yourself. So in the end, I finally tell her that she has an ERMI of 17.4 and a Hertz-Me of about 20, which is in the red zone, and that she should do the following. Before leaving the home, you should test again if the home has molds in it or not, with another ERMI test, not the air sample test, but the dust sample test of the ERMI. You should also test the car with an ERMI test and do a VCS test for all people living in that home. So that's a visual test, because when you have mold illness, it creates a general inflammation, and it also creates inflammation in the visual nerve, so you're not able to distinguish shades of gray. So you can do that on your computer, basically. Just type VCS test mold illness and you will find websites where you can do it. I think it costs about $15. So all people in the home should test with the VCS test if it is probable that they have mold illness. And if that is the case, then you should do the mycotoxins test again for all people living in that home, of course. If you test positive for mycotoxins, you need to test for Marcons. That is a secondary infection that many mold sick people get in the sinuses, and you cannot heal without eradicating Marcons from the sinuses. If a person tests positive for mycotoxins, you need to detox with a mold literate doctor, of course. So you have to take some medication like active charcoal or other medication that helps you get the toxins out of your body, but you should not do that alone, but with a doctor. And well, in my opinion, if the ERMI comes back positive for the home, the best thing is to move. From all I read, I don't believe in remediation. There are people who do, but remediation is expensive, and you're not sure to really have eradicated all the mold colonies in the home. So if a mold colony was not found or a water damage was not found, you still have a moldy home afterwards, and you invested huge sums of money. So in my opinion, if you did the tests, the ERMI test, the mycotoxin test, the VCS test, etc., and all those tests are positive and basically indicate that mold is the problem that is causing your health symptoms, then the best thing is to get out as soon as possible. You should not wait like most people do. You should not try to clean like most people do, because well, you can get much more sick than you are today. That was my case, and if you get more sick, then it gets much more expensive because you lose more stuff. You should test, and if positive, you should get out as quick as possible into a clean environment and start detoxing and supportive medication with a good doctor who is mold literate. There is another option, I would say, and that is called a mold sabbatical, which is basically that you get out of your home, so you rent it like an Airbnb or a place that is clean. So to do it right, you basically have to do an ERMI test of that place. When you do the reservation, you order new clothes on Amazon that are delivered the day you get there. When you get there, you just go inside, you close the door, you get rid of your clothes that you were wearing when you were in the car and in your old home. You put that into a plastic bag, you seal the plastic bag, and you just shower abundantly to get any mycotoxins from your hair or body rinsed away, and you take the new clothes and you stay ideally 3 weeks, but at least 2 weeks in the place. Many people feel much better when they are out of exposure. And many other people don't feel a difference, but they feel the difference when they go back after the mold sabbatical. When they go back into the home where they have been living for years and that has a mold problem. Well, the problem with that approach is that if mold is a problem in your home and you get back after 3 weeks or 2 weeks and you crash so hard that you cannot stay in your home again. So you have to have a plan B prepared if you go back after the mold sabbatical. It might mean that you have to get immediately out and that you cannot go back. That's the problem with this approach. And that's exactly what happened in my case. So I have been detoxing, which opens the doors, so to say, to get multiple chemical sensitivity. That's usually after detoxing. And then I went, in my case, it was only a week away into another place. Didn't feel too much of a difference. Maybe a little better, but it was not clear. But when I went back to my place, it was like 15 or 20 minutes. And I just crawled out on my 4 members out of the home because I couldn't walk anymore. So completely paralyzed. And that was when the Chetomium globosum was just added to my home, because the first test, ERMI test, didn't show it, but at that time there was Chetomium globosum that was added into the mold colonies in this house where I have been living. So why was the Chetomium added? Because I had somebody clean the place, thinking that it was not in the building materials, like water damaged buildings, but it was just on the surface of the walls. Huge mistake, because the cleaning liberated some space for new mold colonies to come in and grow on that space. And that was Chetomium, and that, well, almost killed me. So it's futile to think that you can clean a mold-affected building. You can remediate, which means that you have to break out the infected building materials. So it gets very expensive, and you're not sure that it really works, the remediation. So in my opinion, what I would do is I would do the tests before to establish if your health problems come from a moldy home or moldy car. If the tests are positive, before deciding to move out, maybe I would do 3 weeks of a mold sabbatical. So you have to read up on how to do the mold sabbatical on the internet. But you have to know that it's not only that you have to book a room for 3 weeks, but you have to prepare a plan B where you go after the 3 weeks. Because when you come back and you crash at your home, then you cannot stay there, usually. So if you have any questions, you might post that into the comments of the video, and I will be happy to answer them. And I wish you luck. It's overwhelming, yes. It's your whole life upside down. It's expensive, but usually if you get out of mold, you can get your health back, and that's the most important thing. And also of the persons that are living with you, in your case it's your husband and your daughter. So kids can get sick as well. So Mold is very dangerous. I'm much better. I got recently, some days ago, I got a root canal pulled out, and I have like 5 other places in my jawbone where there are cavitations because of tooth extractions. And I think that I will be much better health-wise when I have finished that. So that's just another expensive part of getting my health back. Those are complex illnesses. There are multi-cause, multi-system illnesses. So probably it's not only mold. You might have your autoimmune disease. You might have like cavitations or dental problems. You might have mercury still in your system. You should do a provocation test, not a normal heavy metal test. That is not enough. You have to do a provocation test also with a doctor. Don't do it yourself. And you have to detox from everything. You might also have a look at Great Plains laboratory, which is called Mosaic's laboratory right now. They changed the name. They also have the organic acids tests. That might be interesting because sometimes mold go inside your body and create colonies over there. And you can see that on the organic acids test, which means you have to treat that with a doctor and antifungal medication. So good luck to you. Take care.
If you have any questions, please go to my website, scroll down and book a free coaching call by clicking on the orange button. Also, please be aware that I'm not a medical doctor or any other health professional, and I'm just giving you some information, tips and personal opinion that you should speak about with your doctor and see if it fits your personal situation and if you can use those tips.